I'm Joel Love with the University of Florida, and my primary focus is on assisting farmers in implementing BMPs, or best management practices that protect water quality. And today we're with Beaver Yoder with Crooked Creek Farms in Calhoun County, Florida, Alta, Florida. And we're here to talk with Beaver about the value of integrating cattle with row crop operations, which is a little unusual. And in Beaver's case, he's focused more on the cattle side of things. So Beaver, we're going to turn it over to you and tell us a little bit about the history of the farm and what it used to be and the focus and how it's changed, and why are you now focused more on cattle instead of row crop?
So I'm pretty fortunate. I've been born and raised right here my whole life, and little history. Grew up in the dairy industry and row cropped a little along the way, and grew our own cow feed for the dairy. Along the way, we integrated some beef cattle into the operation, and in 1995 quit dairying and started row cropping pretty big. Row cropped cotton and peanuts and grains, and continued a small cattle operation. Over time, we have become more focused on the cattle, and to the point where we are now completely out of row crop production here at Crooked Creek, and 100% in the cattle operation, beef cattle.
Okay. What are the tell us a little bit more about what you're doing as far as, what is your operation focus on now? You'd mentioned you've got cow-calf pairs, you're doing preconditioning, and you're running stocker. So tell the audience about that a little bit.
So our primary focus now is a stocker cattle business. So we're buying cattle, buying weaned calves or unweaned calves, and we are straightening those cattle out, which is called a precondition phase. We precondition those cattle primarily in the fall of the year, and we will graze those cattle through the winter on farm fields that have been harvested from a previous row crop that was planted into a winter forage, and we'll graze those cattle generally all the way into April, sometimes into May. Sell those cattle, and then we will turn around and buy some summer cattle also.
Okay.
We have, in addition, we have brood cows. That's a year round, and they're here at Crooked Creek year round, producing a calf, and we use both enterprises for good forage management.
Okay. So Beaver, since most of your operation is focused on stocker cattle, you're looking for very high quality forages in the winter to run those cattle on to get gain for you and possibly the guy that you're cooperating with. So what are the challenges in working with a row crop producer? How does that marriage happen? And then what are some of the challenges you've had when you're doing that? Because again, the annual forages are critical for your part of your operation.
That's right. So the number one thing is it has to work for all that are involved, both for myself and the farmer that is producing that forage. It has to work for both. So we are contract grazing with some farmers, where we are actually we own the cattle, we straighten those cattle out, and we put them on the farmers' fields. They produce the forage, they plant the crop, they fertilize the crop, they produce that, and so it's a contract grazing situation. So it has to work for both the producer as well as for myself, and those challenges can be varied, and it can vary from year to year what those challenges are. So obviously financially it has to work for both, and then from a farmer standpoint, the agronomic benefit behind grazing these cattle on a farm field can't always be measured in financial dollars, although in the end it does have a huge financial benefit to the farmer. Some of the challenges we have is just a farmer annual production year, and a farmer's skill set does not always align with a cattleman's production year and a cattleman's skill set. So it takes a lot of give and take when you're doing it in this manner, where you don't own the land or produce the crop that you're grazing, where you're actually contract grazing with a farmer or producer. So one of the challenges is just being able to work through those differences, and it becomes an educational phase on both parts. And for myself, I have to work with their schedule as far as crop preparation, crop planting, crop harvest, and then replant for the next year. So I have to work with that schedule as well. They have to be able to understand the challenges of myself from a production and a marketing standpoint, and how do we both maximize the potential for that crop. So those are just things you just have to continue to work through and have conversations with.
So Beaver, you're looking for this high quality winter forage to graze stocker cattle on. So a lot of times we think about, all right, a lot of these farms do not have the infrastructure needs. So talk about the labor, the equipment, fencing, water troughs, working pens, day-to-day management. Is the land irrigated versus non-irrigated? Some of the challenges that might bring in a dry fall when you have to grow feed, a dependable food supply. It's too expensive to feed out of a sack or feed purchase feed. Talk a little bit about that, what you've run into.
Yes, the cheapest feed source that we can do for these cattle is a forage. And so you're right, high quality forage to get the maximum growth that we can get. We do want to graze cattle as much as we can without feeding byproducts or feed in a feeder, just from the most economical and cheapest feed sources to graze these cattle. Which in turn, grazing these cattle is the agronomic benefit to the land, and so that's what our main focus is here. So one of the challenges we have, if you take a farmer that wants to start grazing cattle, there's an infrastructure component that's very expensive. So it's not something that you can just jump in for a year or two and then get back out because this isn't working, because you have to fence the property. Yeah. So our high quality forages that we need to produce for maximum production on these cattle, for a farmer to get into this, it comes at a cost. And so the cost of putting the infrastructure in, fencing a piece of property, having some sort of facility to handle the cattle, both at delivery and when they're shipped out, whether that's a portable operation or a permanent setup, it all comes at a cost. Mm-hmm. It comes at a cost, and so in addition to this is a water source, shade depending upon the time of the year. Mm-hmm. You need a shade, and so those are challenges that must be considered when we start talking about contract grazing with a farmer. So those costs can be moved from the cattle owner to the farmer, depends upon the type of situation, the grazing contract. Mm-hmm. But those are costs that are very much that require some input from one or the other of the parties involved. The need for this to have these grazing operations is going to require some input from our NRCS or from FDACs in some manner to help these producers get through that, on a portion of the crop, a portion of it to understand what the benefits are to the producer. So those are just some of the challenges. You have infrastructure outside of that when it's time to move cattle, being able to get trucks in there wherever that facility is, doing it in a timely manner. But more importantly is a good portion of this grazing crop needs to be under irrigation management. That's an important component of this. Dry land has some challenges of its own, whether it's a row crop or whether it's a grazing crop. The dry land has some challenges, and so for me or a farmer, it's the stocking rate according to if it's irrigated or non-irrigated, and so it takes a lot of grazing management to understand that process.
So here's a very important question, probably something on a lot of people's minds. So if a cattleman wants to form a marriage relationship with a row cropper or vice versa, and they want to get cattle on a row crop farm, how is that typically done? And we joke about online dating, and then maybe there's some of that going on, but how did you do that?
Yes.
What kind of relationship did it take, or was it word of mouth? Is it you having to go knock on doors, or did it fall in your lap, or is it a combination of all of the above?
Yeah, that's interesting there, and I'll just tell you up front, it will not work for everybody. It just will not. It is a marriage relationship in sorts. It is a relationship, and it's a lot of give and take. Mm-hmm. And so, this it's not something that you can just advertise out there. It's personalities working with each other, and so for myself, it's those that you can work with. On the other side, I have to be the kind of person that they can work with. So we can lay all the facts out, and a producer can work with it, but unless they are able to have a little give and take in what's comfortable for them, it may or may not work. And so sometimes we do these things with a new producer on a trial basis, and if it works, then we go forward, and if not, or we may need to make some adjustments. But eventually these things, you learn what works well, and you work with those people in the manner that this is what works and this is what does not work, and always be open to learning new ideas. And so the word of mouth goes out that this is a system that works, and this is what it takes to make it happen. So it's personal relationships that you have, and then if there's someone else that has some interest in it, you learn how to approach that in a manner of this is what needs to happen, and if we can make that happen, then let's try it. And some years work better than others.
That's correct. One more question, and this is we'll end it with this. Do you consider yourself a cattle farmer or a grass farmer, or both?
Yeah, that's interesting. There's different aspects to what we're doing. As a cattleman, there's a certain skill set that we're doing cattle, and then there's outside of the precondition phase and the cattle side, there's the grazing management. And so I considered myself a grass farmer because that really intrigued me and still does. To do this of any scale, you have to have some cattleman skills outside of being a grass farmer. Mm-hmm. So I feel like I wear two hats, and it changes from season to season, mm-hmm. or from months to months. And once we get into the grazing season, I change my hat and I'm a grass farmer. So it does change for me. But to do this well, you must consider yourself to be a grass farmer.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Beaver, for sharing your experience in integrating cattle, in your case, cattle with somebody else's row crop.